And as far as the market goes, overseas in Africa has the high gain in Zimbabwe, Nigeria. Interest gains in that direction. And as far as in Australia, Oceania, Pacific, Australia 50 has the highest percentage yield on a weekly, but on a daily, the Australian all had more buys than in New Zealand. As far as in the stock market, it's dealing with the health pharmaceutical and low yielding financial institutions that don't have the insurance, because over in New Zealand they say they usually insure some of their low end banks and so forth. Or to basically be operational, but it's just without insurance and so forth. So then over in Asia, the Asian market has lower yield, and the Yen 225 Nikkei index had a low performing yield. Also showing that America, the NASDAQ, and the Dow Jones 30 kind of balance out to a higher yield. So it gains in that direction in industrialization. And in Europe has similar gains and is moving through the euro at a daily rate of pay around $123 a day. So the market's moving in that direction, and that's fun. And as far as the currency's direction, it's already moving in that direction on the dollar and the yen on the hour chart. New York Stock Exchange opened at 9:30 Eastern Time. It's actually 1327 or 127 Eastern currently. So it's been about 4 hours since the market's been open. Currently looking at the hour chart. Go back 4 hours because the bottom of the chart has a different time zone on it listed. So at the bottom of the chart shows 2000 on January 30th, 2024. So go back 4 candles. Maybe 1600. And as you can see, right around the time when the New York Stock Exchange and the Dow Jones stock market opened in the United States, it did a straight buy, even though it's not really reflected in the tech sector. That straight buy moved around from 147.18 to 147.80. So that's about 62 points. And 62-point gain in direction within that timeline in reference to the stock market shows that the financials are on gains. That's off the gains of the financials. The tech sector slightly down. The small businesses slightly down. At first they were up, but then it slightly went down. And as far as the indices, the Dow Jones Utility is still ranging in negative yield. The Treasury Department slightly came out of that yield of negative 0.3. And that's the nearest yielder to gain out of the list. And the Dow Jones Transportation has slightly negative yield, and the Russell 2000. So those indices still being on a negative yield, but the dollar currency is gained. Then the dollar currency gained off in the Treasury more than it did utilities, because it shows that it was a slight increase that went ahead of utilities. So you go back to it and look at the small businesses. They slightly lost on their utility gain because it's probably departmentalized. And then the tech sector is probably not in the hydro energy. It's into electrical energy, so they probably will charge the tax, an electric tax or something like that, to sustain the energy costs They made it effective out of the Dow Jones through the financial industry, the Dow 30. So if you want to see how the Dow 30 measures in to that scenario, Dow 30 is going to move through financials. So it'll probably move through JP Morgan, Chase Bank. And look at that, that's all the banking firms. Then look at that. And the gains on the day. Put it on desktop so it can be clear to see. And the gains are those sectors today. Interest gains. I can just click the interest on the far right to put the higher interest on the top. Interest gains, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, Visa, American Express, Walgreens, then the pharmaceuticals and Verizon. So that's a medical financial placement. So basically the nearest investment that those firms will probably purchase will probably be Walgreens on a long-term buy. So other than that, being performed out of the investment side and the strategic side, and where the firms are probably maneuvering, it already has a year-to-date negative yield of 12.12%, but a dividend yield of 4.35. So with that market cap and the stock price, it's going to probably be a variation of a range, or they'll use it as a hedge to hold the industrialized pharmaceuticals as a sell point, and then use legislative acts to maneuver Obamacare into the welfare form of outweighing the projects that are established with medication, with pharmaceuticals that's issued through the government, and then keep the manufacturing going through that industry, with investors investing into the financial industry that's banking, and the banks taking the money and putting it back through the welfare. And then it's issued out through the Treasury. That's why I was saying the Treasury kind of jumped ahead of the Dow Jones Utilities, because some people don't have to use those utilities like any kind of alternate substances or so forth. So if they don't, then it still goes to the government in form. So that shows how the Healthcare Act reflected into the U.S. economy, even on a negative 8-cent yield that it shows. So, for example, if it says the loss is around 8 cents, so 8 cents, if that was at 4.8 and it's a 20th of a percent, then that 20th of a percent will be what's deducted to make it 8 cents. So that's like saying $40. So 10% of $40 is 40 cents. 1% is 4 cents. So it's actually like $400. So again, 10% of 400 is 40. 1% is $4, and 0.1 is 40 cents. So basically it's around $400 that was on a negative yield increase that went up from negative 0.3 to negative 0.2. So it was a slight drawback of a gain, well over 2 cent gain, 3 cent gain. On the yield of utilities, it's probably a disposable toiletry that was used in regards. That wasn't based off of industrialization, but written off through the government. And then it went back to the pharmaceuticals and said, hey, well, they went to the bathroom. Let's apply something like that. You gotta get something from water and like that. That's how you know, that's sustaining the economy and using off the interest off the lower yield after they dispose of the waste. And then the disposal would go into the location of the transaction, and it'll be distributed as a write-off. So then the currencies that's buying out of that whole list, it's mostly in the financial sector. So that's why I was saying, for the dollar to only buy that small amount of 62 points, and the stock market to show the dollar has a strong purchase power in regards to the direction of the market, and it's moving mostly through the financials, but it's reducing it on the tech sector, then the financials are turning into forms of credit again. And if it's not in the form of credit, it's a form of ownership, and the market isn't reflecting the direction of the dollar, but it's moving through the financials as if it wouldn't already be able to do that through the nations. And doing that through the nations to the direction of the gains off the volume through the consumer discretionary sector, and then the sector is still in the tech, it still has the sustainability in the market to move with utilities, and in the European market, the gainer will be in the vehicles also. As you can see, Ford, GM, Tesla, and I called consumer discretion there before I went over to that page. So that's how that matched into that. So, and like I was looking at it and said, hey, I know the next page is going to be done with vehicles. And you look at the vehicles and say, hey, consumer cyclicals, I meant to say. But same thing, consumer cyclicals, discretionary, same thing. So it ain't really a difference in those. Because even if you look at it, it ain't going to say that the one right there is going to say the same thing. It's not going to say discretionary, but yeah. And it ain't going to say it in Tesla either, watch. So let's see, what was it? That was the market mover. So it say the same thing, but then watch this up. Assuming this crash. See, such as new cars. See, told you. But that was another way of referencing it. So, other than that, yeah.